and Georgia are both states that are reachable based on current polling. Many people have called North Carolina a swing state already. Georgia is a state that has shown a history of being able to vote for Democrats. It voted for Jimmy Carter a couple of times, who was who that was his home state. I believe Georgia voted for Bill Clinton at least once, although I forget off the top of my head. But both of these states could potentially be pickup targets for Obama. And so therefore my outlook over here is McCain cannot win the election here. Even if he sweeps the Southeast, that doesn't mean he wins the election. That just means he's kind of held serve, so to speak, to borrow a tennis term. But he can lose it. 2 wins for Obama in this region means Obama wins the election. That's my analysis over here. If Obama, for example, takes Florida and Virginia, or Florida and Georgia, or Georgia and Virginia, or North Carolina and Virginia, or something to that effect, if you look at the rest of the races, that would be a prohibitive, as we'll see a little bit later on, that would be a prohibitive lead for Obama going into the rest of the country and the rest of the election. So this is something that's critical, and it's something that's very often overlooked. People are still talking about the swing states being Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Mexico, Colorado, and those are all swing states. Those are all very important, but this is an area of the country that a surprisingly good showing by Obama could really be decisive over here. Moving on to the next region, we are going to look at the South Central region. Now, this is a region that Obama doesn't need, and he's probably not going to get it anyway. You're talking about Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, and of course the big prize in this region, and that's Texas. These are states that all, except for Missouri, all of them very heavily voted for President Bush in both elections. That was in spite of the fact that Tennessee was Al Gore's home state, and Gore still lost Tennessee by a comfortable margin. This state overall, if we take a look at the numbers, 7 states for 86 electoral votes. Bill Clinton was actually very competitive in these states. Clinton took Arkansas, his home state, twice. He didn't take Texas either time, but I think he won Tennessee a couple of times. He was competitive. He was competitive in basically all of these states. He won Missouri twice, and I think Hillary Clinton would have been much more competitive. You know, Obama is much weaker than Hillary Clinton in this part of the country. Of course, Hillary is from Arkansas, and although the truth is Obama did win a lot of these primaries. Obama won Alabama, Obama won Mississippi, Obama won Louisiana, but these are states that he's not going to win in the general election anyway. If Hillary Clinton were the nominee, I think there's a much greater chance that she'd be able to be very competitive in Arkansas, in Tennessee. But as it is, you're pretty much looking at a McCain sweep. The only one that's really in doubt over here is Missouri. First of all, again, it was competitive under Clinton, under Bush. It really voted very strongly Republican both times. In this case, Obama's weaker than Hillary, and of course, this is another region of the country that is socially conservative, and therefore the Republicans do have a natural advantage. The only swing state in the region over here is Missouri. Missouri is considered the bellwether state. Missouri has only once in the last, I think, 80 years or 90 years cast its electoral college votes for a person who did not become president, and that was 1956. Every other election in recent history, since like 1920 or something like that, the winner of Missouri has won the election. But that doesn't mean that it will continue. And in fact, I fully expect McCain to win Missouri. McCain is up by a little bit in Missouri. The demographics certainly favor him. There are 2 big cities in Missouri which tend to favor the Democrats, but in general, he has a little bit of a lead. Bush won Missouri by a reasonably comfortable margin, although it should be also remembered that Missouri did hand the GOP one of its major defeats in the 2006 Senate elections, when Claire McCaskill, a very strong Obama supporter, by the way, defeated Jim Talent. But this is a region that really Obama does not need and that he's probably not going to get. A loss in Missouri is possible and would hurt McCain tremendously, not only because Missouri has its 11 electoral votes, but it means that Obama was really able to come into an area that McCain should win and beat him over there. So this is a region that you're really not going to see much focus on. You'll see plenty about Missouri, I suppose, but you're not going to see much about the rest of the states. If you do see states like Texas being competitive and Obama coming to within a couple of points, you know McCain is in big, big, big trouble. Our next region is the country's swing region. This is the big one. This is the region of the country that gets all the attention. And that is the quote-unquote Rust Belt. And again, I guess I could have called it the Upper Midwest or something to that effect, but I'm calling it the Rust Belt because this is something that's very heavily, I'm not the only one that's called it the Rust Belt, I didn't make up that term, but this is an area that is very heavily into manufacturing. You're talking about Ohio, Michigan, of course, Michigan very famous for the auto manufacturing industry. These are areas of the country that have lost a lot of jobs in recent years based on trade agreements like NAFTA, based on outsourcing, and these are the kinds of things. This is really the region that John Kerry sold his hope on in 2004. He was hoping for big wins in the Rust Belt. He really wasn't really competitive in the South. He wasn't as competitive in Florida as he probably, as Al Gore was and as some other candidates would have been. And he was hoping to win the election by winning the Rust Belt, basically. And as you can see over here, he did okay. I mean, he won Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois. And West Virginia and Kentucky are probably states and Indiana are all states that Democrats don't have. Although that's not really true because West Virginia was won by President Clinton twice. But Kentucky and Indiana are strong Republican states. What he was really banking on was Ohio. He was hoping for West Virginia, I suppose, and the election did come down to Ohio, and he lost Ohio, and therefore the election with it. But many of these states can go either way. Illinois, of course, will go for Obama. That's his home state. Kentucky and West Virginia are both states that voted very, very heavily against Obama during the primary season, and it's very tough to envision Obama winning them in the general election, unless there's just a total landslide. Indiana is an interesting state because Indiana was very strong for the Democrats in the 2006 congressional elections. I think 3 or 4 Republican House seats fell to the Democrats in 2006. Indiana, of course, was a major state in the Democratic primary a few months ago, and Obama did better than expected in that state. Indiana has a very popular Democratic senator, Evan Bayh, who's been named as a potential vice presidential candidate. But still, it's generally considered a Republican state. The big swing states in this region are Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. All of them start off as swing states every year. Kerry won 3 of those states, but they were very, very close. I mean, people think of Ohio as being the difference maker, which it was, but Pennsylvania, on a percentage basis, was just as close as Ohio, or almost as close as Ohio. Wisconsin was much closer than both of them. Wisconsin was the closest state in the entire election. Kerry won it by well under 1%. So if you look at the numbers over here, 7 states in the Rust Belt for 113 electoral votes, making it the biggest of all of our regions. This is the swing region of the country. It's home to key swing states in every election. Now, the one strange thing about the Rust Belt, the one that really makes it kind of unique in the country, is that this is a region that is socially conservative, but liberal economically, liberal from an economic standpoint. A state like New York is very socially liberal and somewhat fiscally conservative, because of all the finances in New York. But this is an area where you have labor unions are very powerful. Labor in general is very powerful, but you have not quite a Southern mentality from a social standpoint, but certainly it's much more socially conservative. Take a state like Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has cast its electoral college votes for Democrats in 4 straight elections, but it has elected many Democrats recently. But you're talking about socially conservative Democrats. Rick Santorum, who was a Republican senator from Pennsylvania from 2000 to 2006, was one of the most conservative senators in the country. Bob Casey, who defeated Santorum in 2006, is a pro-life Democrat, one of the few. But many other areas, with the exception of the big cities like Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Chicago, most of these areas over here have a relatively socially conservative bent. So it will be interesting to see how it works. Now, the one thing about the Rust Belt, and it's definitely going to be a swing region, and the thing that really is that Obama needs to be concerned about is that he did very poorly in most of these primaries. He did well in these primaries, in Illinois and Wisconsin. I mean, Illinois is is a state that he's from. He won Illinois huge. He won Wisconsin in a major victory. That was during his February sweeps, so to speak. Indiana he was very competitive in, which he did better than expected, but he still